Bingi, Okavango, Rasdada, Yaga, Chuck Fender, the Living Fire represent to the fullest. See? Perfect balance. Don't know so. Trad class. Living Fire represent. Keep the fire burning out. What Emmanuel I Celestia Jack. Keep it like right. This is it.
People born in the UK, for example, you'll find that many adopt the culture that is most prevalent in the land that they were born in. So a British culture then, bangers and mashed fish and chips as opposed to rice and peas and ackee and saltfish kind of thing, So, and I think that's a problem because
it's a big problem.
It's quick, it's fast.
Sense of identity and
a big problem.
And that connection.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect Balance Trad Class. Today we have with us a very special and intriguing guest, someone whose work has shaped conversations on race, identity, and social justice in the UK and beyond. Joining us is Nadine White, a multi-award-winning journalist and Britain's first dedicated race correspondent at The Independent. With over a decade of newsroom experience, Nadine has uncovered groundbreaking stories from racism during the Ukraine war to Jamaica's plans to becoming a republic. Her work has earned recognition from the UK's Parliament, the British Journalism Awards, and even Amnesty International. A Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, Nadine made history as the first Black reporter shortlisted for the Paul Foote Award for Investigative Journalism. She also won the Paulette Wilson Windrush Award for her in-depth reporting on the Windrush scandal. But Nadine isn't just a journalist. She's also a filmmaker. Her debut documentary, Barrel Children, The Families Windrush Left Behind, took the UK box office by storm, shedding light on the emotional and cultural impact of migration. We're honored to have you here today to discuss your work, your journey, and of course, your project, Barrel Children. Nadine, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be joining you today. Thank you.
Respect.
Man, again, thank you for being here again, Nadine. So we're going to jump right into the chat class. First thing, Nadine, what inspired you to create Barrel Children?
So my father inspired me to create Barrel Children. I often say in conversations that he was the first quote unquote barrel child I ever knew, a child who was born in the Caribbean and left behind by his parents during the Windrush era, or what's referred to as the Windrush era, which is between 1948 and the early 1970s, while his parents migrated to the UK. So I recall as a child, my father would often speak to my brother and I. I've got a couple of older brothers, but this older brother's a year older than me, about his childhood experiences, in particular his grandmother, his maternal grandmother, Miss Georgie, who was instrumental in helping to mold him and instill him with key lessons that he would then go on and take to life. And he didn't go into details because at the end of the day, we're children, like we are picnic them times, but he delved into how difficult it was for him to leave her behind when he moved to England. So at the time, my brother and I knew that, okay, Dad was born in Jamaica in a parish called Trelawney. And he moved to England as a teenager where he joined his parents or was reunited with his parents. And detected, because kids are quite perceptive, I detected a bit of sadness in him when he would discuss that part of his story in particular. At the time, I just thought that's Daddy's experience, It's only when I grew older and reasoned with the elders and in our communities and understood more about, our journeys as a people that I realized that the phenomenon, as they say, of being left behind, the barrel child phenomenon, was really common. And a lot of people went through the same thing. And we're talking about issues around intergenerational trauma in many cases, certainly the fragmentation of Black Caribbean families. And it's something that still goes on today. So I, being a storyteller and filmmaker journalist, I set about creating this documentary and archiving these important stories. I noticed that since 2018, when the Windrush scandal erupted, which is a political scandal where many Black, Caribbean, British citizens were wrongly stripped of their right by the UK government, I noticed that the term Windrush and then a greater awareness of migration was taking place in the UK. So more people were aware of the mass migration of people from the Caribbean between the 1948 and the early 1970s. But there's less of a focus on the sacrifices and the personal cost of migration. And so I really wanted to go some way towards helping to address that, redress the balance, as it were, through creating this documentary. But yeah, it was my dad, God rest his soul, he passed away several years ago, who inspired me.
Condolences.
Nice.
Condolences.
Nice. The term barrel children, where do you get that from?
It's a term that I've heard used before, and also there's a variation, barrel baby, that is also commonly used to refer to the children who were left behind in the Caribbean. But I must give credit to Dr. Claudette Crawford Brown, who is a fantastic academic. She was based at University of West Indies in Jamaica. She's a Jamaican academic, for those who aren't familiar among your listenership. And she is widely regarded as the first academic who popularized the phrase, as I understand it, and based on talks that Dr. Claudette Crawford Brown herself has given. It's a term that she came across. So it's not something that she coined, but she was instrumental in pioneering research into the experiences of the children who were left behind, and the psychological, emotional, and social ramifications as well. So big up Dr. Claudette Crawford Brown. I'm very much familiar with her academic research, as I say, and she's the first person I'm aware of in the public space who used the term barrel children.
Got you.
Man, big up.
Yes, thank you for being here. We are honored to have you here. You know, the story itself is very interesting, right? And we're gonna get into it as our Virgin said before. What are some of the challenges you faced when you were making the Barrel Children? Um, it's gonna be like a two-part. How did you approach as well assuring the authenticity of telling the story that you're telling? How did you do all of
Yeah,
that?
so
That must have been work.
so I will answer the first question first. What were the
Yes.
challenges of
Yes.
in the documentary? And I would say, first and foremost, convincing people to talk, because it's a big ask, you know, to approach people as a stranger and ask them to delve into their business, their lives, and in many cases, peel back layers of trauma in front of a
It's a
stranger.
difficult thing to do with Jamaicans, especially when you're going to personal stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I think you're right there. And so I would say that was the biggest challenge. And that came at the very beginning of the process, because before you're doing a documentary, you have
Right.
to find people who are willing to talk.
Right.
So it was a case of just explaining to them, and that's to your second point about authenticity, second question around authenticity. It was incumbent on me as a filmmaker and as a storyteller to just be transparent with them about my reason for wanting to tell this story. And in my case, the fact that my dad inspired me, and for me it's a personal project as well. I've always described this documentary as a labor of love. And I have always spoken as well about the three objectives, three main aims that I had for making this documentary. One is to tell my dad's story where he's no longer able to tell it because, he's passed away. To do him justice and to honor him, salute his legacy in that way. But also the second point, to spark conversation, much needed conversation, really important conversations around migration and family life and the cost of migration, I should say, among our communities. And when I say our communities, I mean Black Caribbean, African Caribbean communities, not just in the UK, but across the diaspora. secondly. Thirdly, and finally, to foster, healing, really much needed healing within those conversations as a result of those conversations. And so having discussions with interviewees or prospective interviewees about their participation, I was very frank about that, and just went forward in those conversations to reassure them of my good intentions as a filmmaker, and of my willingness to handle their stories with the utmost care and sensitivity. I think it's important for interviewees to understand that, or know, or feel rather, that they're in safe hands when it comes to who they're speaking with and what the person's intentions are. So that was my approach.
So, what are some of the surprises you had while doing your research and interviews? What were some of the things that surprised you?
I think it dawned on me while conducting the interviews just how present the past can be. So when speaking with former Bible children or people who were left behind in the Caribbean, it was obvious in many cases that some of them had not fully reconciled with their childhood trauma, or healed from their childhood trauma, to put it another way. And so tears were shed, as they recounted their experiences. And it also occurred to me, again, because it had occurred to me prior to making this documentary, that it wasn't just the children who, suffered in many cases. So it's important to remember, I think, when having these conversations, that the parents, they, in many cases, they sacrificed. Obviously, not in all cases, they sacrificed, and they lamented over the separation that they had to endure from their children. And then also should look at the grandparents or the caregiver. In many cases, it was the grandparents who they were left with, and are with, who are tasked with the responsibility of raising these children. And so the grandparents, not only in those cases, have had to wave goodbye to their children, the first wave of migrants in that era, who went to England to pursue better financial prospects, but also their grandchildren eventually down the line when they were sent for. And so I don't think when these conversations are had, and they're not had often enough, that much thought is given to the caregivers as well. And as I say, we're talking about intergenerational trauma. So for me, what surprised me was just how present the past is, and how many people, despite growing up and moving forward because they have to, and going on to forge their own paths in life, careers, children, many of them still are grappling internally with pain from their childhood. And, in some
One
cases,
thing that I found,
they was the first time that many of them had discussed, how they felt about being left behind. And not just left behind either, I should make that clear. It wasn't being left behind in some cases that really brought about feelings of negative feelings for the former Barrel children. It was the culture shock of coming over and
reuniting.
exactly, and being sent for by parents who they had no real recollection of, because they left when they were young, or they weren't used to like that because they weren't around. There was no physical connection with those parents. So, and then coming to 1970s England as well, in many cases, or just England back in the day where overt racism was rife. You're being told to go back to where you come from. You're being called racist slurs in the street, being dealt with away in school. The education system discriminating against many Black kids of that time. There's the educationally subnormal scandal that happened in the 1970s. So they had to deal with this perfect storm of trials and tribulations, on top of being in a state of grief and longing because they're missing their family, their people, and the life that they had, that they were accustomed to back in the Caribbean. So that, I think, therein lies a real sense of trauma. And so a lot surprised me, to be fair, because I didn't have that experience. So I'm coming into those interviews ready to learn about the interviewees' perspectives. And so I was surprised by a lot of what I heard as well.
Right. the profound
That's one of
effects.
the that was one of the major things that I found surprising as well. Because like even listening to like Blacker Jet's interview, right? And he was like, when he came and saw his mom, he was like, was that my mom? Or you understand? Like he could not identify his own mother. And for a child to not be able to identify their own mom or parent per se is traumatic in and of itself. And I found that to be very surprising.
Right. And during that era, a lot of our children went through that, especially when we're speaking about the Windrush generation, especially, right? That trauma. It's traumatizing. It's a sacrifice, but is there a balance? I guess the balance is when they do come together, right? When you get that family unit, your mother, your parent, the children together, and they're in one place. I think that's the end goal, but the in between is very, very
And,
traumatizing.
and sometimes the end goal isn't that you don't get the desired outcome either. Because
Right,
sometimes the
right.
trauma has such a
Yes,
great effect that
absolutely.
sometimes even when you bring the family back, it's almost as if it's irreconcilable or
Right.
it's irreparable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And just to add, it's added trauma,
mhm,
because remember, these are people who are coming from
trauma.
slavery, who are coming from, this colonization with that trauma, with, the dismantling of the family. And then once more again, you think that, it's going to come together now and then it's this dismantle again.
Yeah.
So it just add to all the trauma. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and another thing too is, and I always talk about this, is that we're aware of these traumas, right? But there's still nothing done as towards a therapeutic response. Like there's no kind of therapy to kind of address these things. And that's one of the things why I think that barrel children is such a invaluable contribution to our experience as a people, because it speaks from a different perspective, as you've identified.
Yeah.
Because most times we only speak about the people, the parents who actually made that sojourn, made that journey, but there's no consideration of the other players in this drama.
Right.
And I think that it's a very noble effort to really bring this to the forefront, and we thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I truly
Absolutely.
appreciate. And I was just really intentional too about joining up the dots, connecting the dots throughout the process of telling these stories. So just to revisit what I mentioned before about the national, speaking from a UK context, the national conversation around Windrush as a result of the Windrush scandal, to say greater awareness of that mass migration. We talk about Windrush in such glowing terms. And the trailblazers, the elders, are rightly lauded for their contributions to British society. And there's often phrases like, oh, they left the Caribbean for a better life or in search
Right.
of better
Right.
financial prospects. Well, we don't talk about why. We don't talk about how after the abolition of slavery, all of the profits from no reparations haven't been paid to the former colonies. So it left the economies across the Caribbean dysfunctional and not serving, the black majority populations. And so when the opportunities came for them to migrate to the UK, the country that once colonized theirs, many of them felt like they had no choice or didn't have a choice. They went for better financial prospects because of the legacy of slavery and because of colonization, and I feel like that bit is missing from the conversations around why people felt compelled
Right.
to move in the first place and
We
why
made
that they why they had to sacrifice in that way. So,
we made,
it does address that as well, because I
mhm.
feel like it's
We
important.
made several references as well previously to the Windrush scandal and the Windrush generation. I'd like you to just, for the benefit of the viewers who may not be aware of what this is, if you could just give them a synopsis of what we're referring to when we talk about the Windrush scandal.
Yeah, sure. So in 2018, it emerged through the news that thousands of, well, at the time, I think people thought it was hundreds, but many Black Caribbean British people who were in the UK were wrongly stripped of their rights to live in the UK, to work in the UK, and to travel. Some people, in the most extreme of cases, were wrongly deported from the UK back to their birth countries in the Caribbean because the government department, particularly the Home Office, said that they have no right to be in the UK despite being in the country and living in the country and being British citizens, subjects of Britain from birth. So it was a scandal. A lot of people call it the Windrush scandal. Campaigners have pointed out that it's probably correct to call it the Home Office scandal and to not have Windrush synonymous with such atrocities, the term Windrush. But that's what the Windrush or Home Office scandal is in a nutshell. It's where Black British Caribbean people were wrongly stripped of their rights to live and work in the UK and disenfranchised by the British state. So apologies were given. That's okay. By British ministers to Windrush generations, to the prime ministers of CARICOM countries, for this travesty. But to date, I mean, people are still looking for compensation. People are still applying for compensation and seeking redress for being wronged by the British government, and compensation payments are being paid out, albeit slowly, according to some critics. But yes, that's the difference.
Thank you.
These stories is still happening even in this dispensation where we think that we have to move to another country for a better life and looking for that dream, leaving the children behind, and the trauma continues and there's no restitution, reparation for those damages that are still ongoing. I have to say the first time I came across the Barrel Children was on a trip in London with the family, and we went to visit the Black Archives in Brixton. And the film was being showed on a screen, and we stopped to watch. And there and behold, a very good friend of ours, Sam, who joined us on the show before episode 48, was a guest on the Barrel Children, and he made the recommendation and put the idea forward to have a chat with Nadine. And we have to say, big up Sam for that, Really
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks.
that
Big up, Sam.
connection and making the link. Nadine, in bringing these stories to life, you faced challenges, made surprising discoveries, and worked to ensure authenticity. Now, beyond the production process, let's talk about the heart of Barrel Children, its themes. At its core, this is a story of migration, separation, and resilience. What do you hope the audience might take away from the Barrel Children?
Thank you for that question. I hope that everyone who watches the documentary is able to take away new insights about the migration experience and learn new perspectives around those who were left behind and later sent for, and even those who weren't, which is another layer to this story that wasn't addressed in great detail in the first installment of Barrel Children, but I am working on a follow-up. But I think it's important to learn new perspectives, and I think by doing so, foster greater empathy for other people, and to understand that people are ultimately shaped by or influenced by their experiences, particularly the experiences that took place during their formative years. So if one person is able to turn to another person and have a conversation around these migration experiences and have greater empathy for those who went through those experiences, and just understand more about our journey as a people, as Black Caribbean people in particular, descended from slavery, then I think my work as a filmmaker through part one of Barrel Children has been done. So I would like everyone who goes along to the screenings to learn more about those experiences and be able to have greater empathy for others as a result.
Yeah, man, thank you for that. The documentary captures deeply personal stories of migration and resilience. But it also speaks to much larger conversation. Migration is often framed in a particular way in mainstream media, but Barrel Children offers a different perspective. How do you think this documentary challenges mainstream narratives around migration and diaspora experience?
So I think it does that in a few different ways. First of all, it adds context to the stories around migration and the migration experiences by delving into not just the what, which is the migration, but the why. So going back to my earlier point about the importance, well, for me as a filmmaker, and I think for any of us having conversations around migration in the African Caribbean context, the importance of examining the legacy and the ongoing impact of enslavement, the mass enslavement and trafficking of African people from the continent, and the impact, the ripple effect that it's had across generations. You know, that is very important context when we look at migration and people's reasons for leaving, uprooting, actually, I think is a more appropriate word, from their birth countries and delving out into lands unknown in search of better or greater economic prospects. So the film provides important context around that. And also, you know, people humanizes not just people, but the stories around migration. So oftentimes, particularly when we look at the mass media and the mainstream reporting around migration, yeah, it's discussed in a very detached way and in the context of statistics and numbers. What this film serves to do is to actually remind viewers and one and all that behind every story, behind every statistic, then is a person, you know. So at the very heart and core of this documentary is the human experience, which I'm hoping, you know, everyone will be able to relate to who watches it. And again, this is where empathy and understanding for our fellow person can come in. And by having that sense of empathy and understanding, we're then able to view the world differently and maybe treat one another with more compassion as well.
Yeah, man. You know, a film like Barrel Children doesn't just informs, it resonates, it sparks conversations, stir emotions, and brings hidden stories to light. Given the depth of this documentary, have you received any particular powerful reactions from viewers that stood out to you?
Thank you. So powerful reactions. There have been quite a lot of powerful reactions across screenings of the film, and in many cases, the screenings of the film have been accompanied by question and answer sessions with myself as director and members of the audience, giving them an opportunity to share their feedback and ask questions. And there have been a lot of tears, particularly from people who were in the audience and were able to directly relate to those experiences because, you know, to use someone's word, that was me, that was them. They were the child who was born in the Caribbean and, you know, left behind and wrenched away from all that they knew, all that they loved and were familiar with, and plunged into a very different, colder, grayer reality in England. So that kind of feedback is really powerful, moving. I'll also share a story about a conversation that I had following a screening that happened last year, October, towards the end of last year, towards the end of Black History Month in October. An elderly woman approached me. The screening took place in a church in North London, and she approached me and asked if she could have a word, have a chat. And she looks like about in her 60s, you know, older woman, elder for me. And I said, of course. And she said that she represents the generation of parents who left the children behind. She was born in Guyana and migrated from Guyana to the UK in the 60s and left a daughter behind. And she said it's only after watching my film an hour before our conversation that she understood how difficult it must have been for her daughter, that transition. And at the time when she sent for the daughter, there was conflict. They didn't quite gel at first, get along. And she was at a loss in terms of what to do as a mother to, foster a closer relationship with that bond with her daughter that was missing. Eventually they got there, but she was explaining, more about the tension and the friction that ensued after the daughter's arrival in the UK. And she said, yeah, the penny dropped for her, having watched the film. And thank you for not only highlighting the Bible children's experience, but holding space within the production to consider the sacrifices of her generation, the parents who left their families behind and migrated to the UK. So that was extremely moving for me. And there have been some really powerful responses to the film among audience members, and it's just incredibly humbling as a filmmaker, because, as I say, I've always been intentional throughout this process of making the film about sparking important conversations within and around our communities and helping to foster a sense of healing as well.
We've been talking about this more so specific situation that's related to the UK, right? But I don't know if this is such a unique condition, because I want to get your view based on the research you've done. Do you think the experience of barrel children is actually mirrored in other migration stories across other communities?
Other communities, as in
As
beyond.
in outside of the African diaspora?
Okay, absolutely. Sociologists refer to it as serial migration, and that pattern is common across other communities. Eastern European communities, beyond Black communities within India. That there are definitely common threads as far as serial migration beyond Black communities or African descendant communities. And I'll also just add that the film does address the fact that not everyone who migrated from the Caribbean during that era went to the UK. Many people went to the US. Many people went to Canada as well. So that was just an important point that I wanted to mention. That is raised in the film. But yeah, migration, leaving family members, leaving birth countries, and striking out in the world for better prospects, not just for self but also for family, is very common across other communities as well. And that's another reason why I say that humanity is at the core of this documentary. And I think many people who love someone, who have families, those in particular, will be able to watch the film and relate to the hardship that.
What role does cultural heritage play in shaping the identities of second generation migrants?
I think, and when you say second generation, just to clarify, are you referring to the generation born to those who migrated? Because where I've noticed that first, second, third generation, people can mean slightly different things depending on who you're talking about. Who are you referring?
I would refer to both second and third generation, because I think that there would be some effect on both, right?
So second generation is in the generation born to those who migrated, and then the generation after. So cultural heritage, I think it can mean different things to different people as well. If you're referring to cultural heritage in the context of the culture of those who were born outside of the UK, then I think that that's probably more essential, or has been more essential, in shaping the identities of the second generation compared to the third. I notice that as you go down the generations and further away from the Caribbean, as it were, in the UK context, certainly there's a detachment there. And the third generation are less, by and large, in my experience, based on the conversations I've had, less connected with the cultures of their parents and grandparents, that in terms of those who were born outside of the UK, than the second and first, if that makes sense. So down the line, the detachment, there's a phrase that people say, we're losing recipes. which basically refers to the you know, the sense of detachment that comes about. And I
From
think
one's culture.
there are various reasons for that. So then people born in the UK, for example, you'll find that many adopt the culture that is most prevalent in the land that they were born in. So a British culture then, you know, bangers and mash, fish and chips, as opposed to rice and peas and ackee and saltfish kind of thing, you know? So, and I think that's a
Gotcha.
problem because
It's a big
It's quick.
problem.
that
It's quick.
detachment
It's fast.
of identity
It's a
and
big problem.
self and that connection.
I think one of the major problems to that is that cultural connection should be able to form that therapy that we spoke of earlier, right? Or a part of the therapy, because it gives us that sense of belonging, that sense of identity, right? And then as we lose that, mind you, we're already detached from our original African identity. So now we've created this Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean identity, and now we're becoming detached from even that. So I think that cushion that we would have, having lost that as these generations progress, is another sad reality of this dilemma.
I'll add though that one attitude that I think is too prevalent within our culture or shared approach or common approach as Jamaican people is this idea that I'm black people, but I'll speak about the culture of my parents and grandparents. This idea that we perhaps shouldn't discuss traumatic life experiences and the things that ail us and pain us. I think that idea, that mindset, has done us a disservice if we're talking about the concept of healing. I think that
A cultural thing.
there's a
Mm.
wall of silence around these migration stories, particularly when it comes to the sacrifices and particularly when it comes to the uncomfortable elements of those experiences of migration. And because
We're expected to suffer in silence.
suffer in
We
silence,
need closure.
We're expected to
We need
suffer in
closure.
silence.
yeah, suffer in
We need
silence,
closure.
this stiff upper lip, you know,
Yeah.
idea
You know,
and the mantra and this equation of disclosing our pain and
that's
sharing
weakness.
vulnerability as weakness. I think it does us a disservice, and that is a part of our culture, I'd say, and shared approach
True.
and
You
ideology.
know,
We should work
you know,
collectively to dismantle that.
true. As Rastafari, we look towards Haile Selassie as our monarch, right? And he tells us, or he admonishes us, that he says collective reasoning is the only source of strength. You understand? So the only way we can move forward as a people, we have to come together and really reason together and speak together. And not just about what we want to do, but also of the things that we've endured. Because if we cannot overcome that which we've endured, then there is no moving forward.
You know. And the other thing is recognizing that you actually having an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They would say a man blow.
yeah,
Them say
yeah,
a man.
yeah,
What
Them
about
say a man
stress?
blow. You get hurt, Nadine.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
good. You get hurt, and you want to cry as a child, a boy, especially boys,
yeah,
and they're gonna tell you, "Suck it up, man, a man blow."
yeah.
You're not even allowed to experience pain, like
Right, right.
it's
It's
wrong.
No
hard.
weakness.
But
No weakness.
at the same time, it has contributed to our resilience. So there's good and bad in everything, and I do agree that this is something that has to be addressed and has to be remedied.
Yeah.
But I will also say that has also contributed to our resilience as a people, which is one of the reasons why we're here too. So, on the flip side.
Yes. Nadine, I was doing some research and I saw you work as a race correspondent for the Independent. Could you explain what a race correspondent do? What that job entails?
I started working at the Independent in 2021, and the role was designed and advertised following George Floyd's murder in the US. So there was a reckoning around the world. We saw the global anti-racism protests and demonstrations that took place. And the Independent recognized that there's more that it could do to increase and improve ultimately its coverage of stories within and around Black, Asian, and minoritized communities. So hence the role. At the time, I was working at HuffPost UK. Prior to that, the Gleaner in the UK and the Voice newspaper, Britain's longest running newspaper. So I started at the Independent. And so my remit is reporting on stories within and around Black, Asian, and minoritized communities, which, is something that I've actually always done. I've been in the media industry and news for 12 years at this point, and I've always been intentional about highlighting stories that speak to us, that are relevant to us, resonate with us as Black people, and not just in the UK, but around the world. So my role at the Independent is an important continuation of the work that I've done over the years. So that's my remit, reporting on those stories. And that's mainly in the context of current affairs and politics, but I report across various verticals, so lifestyle, entertainment from time to time as well,
Gotcha.
as comment pieces, opinion pieces, etc. But yeah, that's a bit about my role.
You mentioned politics a while ago, and I saw you and the equality minister Kemi Badenoch had a little
Badenoch.
role in COVID. What was that about? But what's her name? I
Badenoch,
pronounce it right?
yeah. So yeah, Kemi
Yeah.
Badenoch. Yes. So she was up until the election that took place, the general election, the equalities minister under the Conservative government, among other roles. So I saw a video. Many people saw a video that was published online, featuring a cross section of politicians encouraging Black, Asian, and people from minoritized communities to take the COVID vaccine. And at the time, there was a real concern about the low uptake of vaccines, the COVID vaccine, within our communities. And so this video was specifically aimed at, people from those communities, encouraging them to take the vaccine. I noticed, as did many people, that the Equalities Minister, Kemi, was absent from the video. And I was thinking, oh, why is that? You're a big Equalities Minister, get behind the message, say it with your chest. Why are you not in the video? I'm sure in terms of achieving their objective of encouraging vaccine uptake, her presence in the video would have sent a strong message to,
Yeah.
the target audience. And I was approached by several prominent people in Westminster, who I've never named and will never name, saying that Kemi refused to participate in the video, which as Equalities Minister is, that's in the public interest to know why. And as a journalist, we speak truth to power, we find out the why. And so I approached Kemi's office and the Equalities Office, which she was a part of at the time, asking why. And I didn't get a response despite chasing. So, as journalists, that's all a part of due diligence and research, and we call that a right of reply. If you're going to write a story about something, so in this case, it would be highlighting, the video, but also quoting sources, very, very strong sources in Westminster, that the Equalities Minister refused to participate in this video, then you go to the person who's been named or who will be named in the article and ask them for their side of the story, essentially. This is what's being said. What do you have to say? And you give a deadline. That's a right of reply process as a journalist. So she didn't reply to me. I chased a couple of times after leaving it for a reasonable amount of time. And then I'm on Twitter, and the Equalities Minister tagged me in a thread, an 8-part thread, where she called me creepy and bizarre and accused me of sowing disinformation at a time when, national crisis, international crisis is happening, and there's, distrust in the media and politics. And it was a personal attack, and it went right to the heart of my integrity as a journalist, as a reputable journalist, who's worked very hard over the years and is a trusted voice within UK media. Not only did she publicly attack me, but she has effectively launched a pylon. So I had a number of messages and negative tweets, abusive tweets from right-wing fanatics and supporters of Kemi and the Conservative Party. And it was a lot. I put my profile on private just to ward off some of the noise and came off. And it was a horrible time because I just lost my sister to COVID as well.
Condolences again.
Yeah, condolences.
Thank you. No one needs that nonsense at the best of times, but particularly when you're grieving.
And this is all for just doing your job
Exactly.
as a journalist.
Just doing my job, exactly. And it raised important questions about, freedom of the press. And
Yeah, talk about freedom of the press
yeah, ministers should be.
and equality.
Yes, equality, exactly.
Minister of Equality.
Yeah, so it was heartening to see the outpouring of support, that I received from not just colleagues at HuffPost, which is where I worked at the time, but across the UK media industry. There was a real, stance of solidarity, and not even just in media, but politics as well. People really came out in defense of not just me, but the principle of holding power to account. That's very important. And what she did,
Of course.
similar things that were happening, it set a dangerous precedent. And she never apologized despite being asked to. That's what happened there. But 4 years later, she's now a leader of the Conservative Party, the first black leader
Yeah.
of the party. And
Okabongo, you would be happy to know that she's now the leader of the opposition.
yeah.
I know of her.
Yes,
So
so
there
yeah,
were no
never
consequences.
forget, and that was
No consequences.
No
you know.
consequences.
interesting. That was interesting.
Just reward.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna add that she's a sister.
She's a,
Yeah.
She's
She
black.
looks like. She
She's
looks
black.
like, yeah.
She's black.
she's a black woman.
Yeah,
Sister
but hey,
represents the family.
Say that again, sorry.
you know.
She's saying she's a sister, so I'm saying she's black.
Mhm.
Because sister represents the family.
Right. But as Chronic say, black skin mean nothing, Nadine, what's next after Burial Children? Is there a follow-up project?
Yes, so I can confirm that there's a follow-up project. I'm limited in what I can say at the moment, but I'm very excited, and it will be an opportunity to explore other aspects of the barrel child phenomenon and migration experiences. So in more robustly and in more detail, because as a film, it was challenging with part one, I wanted to fit so much into
Everything.
the hour, the 55-minute
Yeah, into
block.
one.
And then you have to be brutal. You have to, chop and decide what you're leaving in and what you're taking out, and just be meticulous in telling the story. So I think the beauty with a follow-up project is it affords the opportunity to peel back layers. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the children who were never sent for, or the children that didn't receive parcels, as it was more commonly than barrels back in the day, but didn't receive parcels and barrels. There were different experiences that I would like to explore. So yes, working on the follow up, and I look forward to hopefully joining you all on this podcast in the future to talk all about that.
Definitely. You have an open invitation. I was about to say as well that the phenomenon of barrel children, right, gives you also the opportunity with all the cutting and the chopping and everything that you did to release an extended version of the original barrel children as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that the possibility is definitely there. It's all about, for me as a filmmaker, doing these stories justice. These people who have agreed to share their experiences with me.
True.
I don't take it lightly that they've done that, and I think
Sure.
it's important to do these stories justice and tell it with integrity and sensitivity, in the interest of not just them but our communities and our people more broadly. So and also I think it's important to talk about the barrel children of present day, because it's still going on, and the difference between a key difference, not the only difference, but a difference between then and now, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and now, is the process of sending for children is not as it's not as easy as it was back in the day because of stringent immigration
More
regulations
bureaucracy.
in the UK.
Yeah.
So it's
That
it's
opens up a different can of worms.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Those left behind. It opens a different kind of wounds in the sense of those left behind too, right? Even now because of the bureaucracy, and even then, So we're looking forward to that part of your story.
Thank you. I look
Yeah, absolutely.
forward to telling it and taking this on the road. I launched the film in Jamaica at the beginning of last year with a reception and a screening at the British Embassy in Kingston, hosted by the
Nice.
High Commissioner to the UK, Judith Slater. And that was well attended. It was a private launch. People like, Sir Oliver Samuels came along. Black Dread was in Jamaica at the time. He came along. And it was a great event. And that was followed by a public screening at 10A in Kingston. And that was hosted by Justine Hensel in Kingston, followed by a Q&A session with Black Dread, myself, and Dr. Claudette Crawford Brown joined us on stage, which was fantastic. And so I hope to be able to take the film to other Caribbean islands as well,
Yeah.
and really, keep the conversation going and ensure that as many people see the film as possible. The challenge that I'm having is by the time, being a full-time, it's only having a certain amount of annual leave in the year, and also finances, of course, to be able to facilitate those trips and those screenings as well. But it's my intention to keep on going. I took it to New Orleans. It was shortlisted for the Essence Film Festival in July, so that was great as well. It was well received there with lots of
Nice.
positive
Congrats.
feedback.
Congratulations.
Still on the road, still pushing.
I'm gonna extend an invitation to have a screening in Dubai, so I'll start to get to work with my team, and we'll work together to have something in this region as well. So
Dubai.
we'll talk
Yes,
more
I.
about that off here.
Appreciate it. I look forward to that. Thank you.
How can people support and amplify the message of the documentary, Nadine?
How can people support and amplify? Well, I first of all, I thank everyone who has taken an interest in Barrel Children and gone along to screenings, watched it. I would say that if anyone who has seen the film and feels moved to, please spread the word. It could be a tweet, it could be a post on Instagram, it could be Facebook. Social media is a really powerful tool these days in terms of communication. So spread the word, please. If you're minded to, that would be great. Even word of mouth, that's also a powerful way of spreading the message. And if you are able to, or if you want to get in touch with me to discuss a screening to ensure that more people get to see it, then feel free to do that. Instagram is out there, as well as I'm on a bit of a break from Twitter at the moment for political reasons, but as are many people. But I'm on Instagram, so that's Nadine, Nadine _Writes, WRITES. And email me, hello.nadine.white@gmail.com. I'm really keen to collaborate with as many people as possible to get the word out, get the message out, and to facilitate more screenings.
I think we've missed a very, very, very important question, Nadine. How do people access the documentary outside of screenings?
Really important question. So at the moment, there is no way to access the film outside screenings. It would be great to get it on a streaming platform one day, like an Amazon Prime, perhaps, or an
Netflix.
Yeah, and a lot of people have asked that question when I've met them at Q&A sessions. But there's a process behind that, and I'm having conversations. But at the moment, the only way to see the film is through booking for screenings. I will say though that there is a short version, a 20-minute version of Barrel Children for those who want to get a bit of a flavor, the film and a sense of what it's about. So if you Google, anyone who's interested in watching the short version, which is available via the Independence website, if you Google Barrel Children, the families Windrush left behind, independent or something like that, then it should come up and you'll be able to watch it.
Got you.
Yeah, it was an arrangement between the independent and I, where I gave them a short version, and that was platformed
Got you.
on their site just to generate
Nice.
interest. And that happened before
Okay.
I launched the longer version in 2023, which did very well at the
Gotcha.
UK box office. I'll just add, it debuted among the UK's top films during its opening weekend in
Excellent.
June 2023, which I'm thank you. I'm really proud of, particularly as an independent filmmaker. This was a self-funded endeavor that took 7 years to make, just because of
7
the
is a perfect number.
7. Yes, yeah.
Mm.
It-
Perfect number.
So yeah, that,
Completion, you know?
yes, exactly, completion, and nothing happens before its time, as they say. So it's been a journey,
Yes.
but yes, that's how people can see the film, through booking it, or the short version is out there in the meantime.
Got you. Another thing, you use that term, humanize. And we've spoken about all your accomplishments and all these wonderful things you've done. But we haven't spoken about your background. We want to humanize Miss Nadine White. So tell us a little bit about Nadine White. And I'm going to leave it up to you to tell us what you want us to know.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And again, thank you all for your time. This has been a great conversation. Nadine White represents Moko Clarendon. That's what I'll start with. You know, it's my maternal side of the family hail from Moko, and anytime I'm in Jamaica, which is often, then that's my home away from
Whitechapel or
That's not
Brixton
fear,
Hill?
though. That's not fear. That's not fear. What about Trelawney?
Trelawney. I've got a lot of love for Trelawney. That's roots as well. You know, it's just further up from Brixton Hill, actually, where the family come from. In answer to the other question, but yeah, I like to chill with the family up in Mocha, and I'm very family orientated. I love reggae. My favorite singer is Dennis Emmanuel Brown, the crown prince of reggae. My idea of a good time is chilling indoors and listening to music, you know, with my nearest.
From Dennis Brown.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good choice.
Queen
Good
Majesty.
choice.
Queen Majesty is probably my favorite
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah,
As a majestic queen.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. But I family orientated, love God, you know, have a real heart for community. You know, my life's work, or part of my life's work, is to highlight our stories and our truths and our perspectives as a people. And yes, I love to laugh. I think I've got a good sense of humor. I like to have conversations, ice skating. Sometimes I'm just a down to earth individual, and
Good thanks.
you can probably see the picture of Garvey on my wall. I'm a bit of a Garveyite, and that's me. That's
Horrible.
Pan-Africanets.
Thank you.
An absolutely incredible discussion, Nadine.
Thank you.
In the words of Boom Boom, in the immortal words of Boom Boom, what more can we do? You know, we couldn't pay for this.
Right.
We could not pay for this, you know. So we want to really thank you, Nadine, and we also want to encourage you in continuing the work that you've started out on, because it is a valuable work, and it's one that, you know, sometimes people do things and there isn't an immediate recognition as to its validity or relevance, but time will tell the relevance and significance of this work that you've chosen to engage in. And I want to let you know that you have the support of the Perfect Balance Strad class, and you are always welcome to be a part of our family, as you are now a family
Sure.
sister.
Thank
Okay. And I want to say that feel free to let us know whenever there's a screening. So if we're able to attend, we'll definitely attend and support. I want to also encourage our viewers to contact you at you're on most social platforms at Nadine, capital uppercase NADINE underscore uppercase WRITES, and I think we'll put it on the screen when we do the thing so they could see it and to contact you and to offer their support. And also, if there's any financial support that can be offered, because at the end of the day, you just identified as well that this is self-funded. So if there's any financial support that can be offered, then they can discuss stuff like that with you, and then we can see how stuff like that can be arranged as well. But I think that that is something that is necessary and good. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience before we go?
Well, thank you all for your time. This has been a fantastic interview, a long time coming, and I appreciate, your interest in having this conversation and warm welcome, and hosting me so
Thank
fantastically.
you for being here.
No worries.
Thank
This
you
is
for
the
being
journey
here,
that
sister.
we're on, and
Thank you.
the stories of the African diaspora and Africa has to get out there. We're a young platform, and we are building. With your profile, you still taking the time out to come and be a part of the platform. So we're available for you anytime you want to come and share a story that needs to be out there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
If I
you.
can just
Thank you, Nadine.
quickly, I'd like to quickly big up the audience for listening when this goes out, and also big up those who featured in the documentary. So, Mr. Samuel Nelson, we call him Big Sam.
Yeah, man. Big up, Sam. Big up, Sam.
Thank you to him and to Mr. Vadley Campbell, Mr. Birchall Davidson, Miss Merlin Roan, Mr. Anthony Brown, Dr. Elaine Arnold. There were several
Black
people
Dread.
who featured in the Blacker Dread, of course. And there would be no documentary without them, and I really want to take time to acknowledge their contributions as well, and for running with me over the 7 years, because it's been a journey, as I say, labor of love for all of us. And thanks for everyone who supported the documentary or who's interested in doing so. Much appreciation.
That's what happened when the community come together.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
That is it.
Yeah, man.
All right. Yes. So do remember to like, share, and subscribe. Become a part of this journey. Collaborate with us. The Perfect Balance Triad Class is a place where conscious-minded and like-minded individuals are guided towards a full realization of their potential through collective reasoning. We have Bingi, Yaga, aka Teacher Ma'at, Okavango, the Rebel Guru, Nadine White.
Blessings.
I'm yours truly, Rastada. This has been a wonderful episode of the Perfect Balance Strat Class. And I just want to add before we sign off as well that sometimes through adversity, through challenges, beautiful things happen. So sometimes we shouldn't allow emotion, and I'll talk personally, to to get the better of us. So I want to say, Nadine, thank you. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you. Thank you so
Um,
Make sure so you can't beat him
everyone.
in a rebel. You hold him on up first.
Nadine, we'll tell you off here what we're talking about.
I said the perfect balance, strat class. I don't know, see a truck for the living for this represents. Good over evil, me tell them see a life over death. I swear, said I will never switch. Keep the fire burning out. Holy Manuel I Selassie, Jah, blazing fire.